She called from the future. About 3.5 years ago, when my wife was pregnant with our baby, I got a phone call from an unknown number. When I picked it up, it was a little girl who called me Daddy. I told her, "Sorry, but you've got the wrong number." And she answered, "No, you're my daddy." I proceeded to tell her, "No, I don't have a daughter." And then the little girl said in one of the most creepiest little kid voices I can remember, "Oh yes you do, Daddy." I was so freaked out and strung out on caffeine that I just hung up. My wife asked me what had happened, and I joked that our daughter had called me from the future. Sure enough, a few months later, we did have a little girl, and I did become a daddy. Now fast forward to yesterday. I was taking care of her and moving some boxes, and I heard her on the phone with Grandma. At first I thought nothing of it. Then I realized she must have used the auto dial herself, and I was impressed. Then I realized I needed to ask her some questions and then put the phone out of reach to prevent unwanted 911 calls and the like. When they were done talking, I asked her who else she had called, and she said, "Just Grandma and you." I'm 100% sure she didn't phone me yesterday, even though she maintains it and says that we did talk. I checked the call log, and it has dozens of numbers on auto dial that she had tried, and our home number was one of them. So, while I'm sure it's just a coincidence, you have to admit it's a bit spooky. Rig 12. The ambulance company I used to work for had a haunted ambulance, Rig number 12. A lot of emergency medical technicians had their own stories about it, mostly involving weird noises coming from the patient compartment or the electronics going haywire, but I never put much stock in paranormal stuff. My personal experience was when my partner and I were in Rig 12 and posted in a rural community at 3 a.m, so it was pitch dark and dead quiet. We were both dozing up in the cab. I was in the driver's seat and she was in the passenger seat. I woke up to a muffled voice and initially thought that my partner was trying to talk with me. I told her I was trying to sleep and rolled over toward the window and closed my eyes again. Then I distinctly heard a male voice say, "Oh my God, am I dying?" Followed by what sounded like heavy breathing for a couple of seconds, and then complete silence. My partner and I both sat straight up and looked back into the patient compartment where it sounded like it came from. It was quiet for a couple of seconds. Then we heard the click of an oxygen bottle regulator and hissing like it was leaking. I turned on the compartment lights and we both piled out of the rig. Initially, I thought a transient may have climbed in the back while we were sleeping and was messing around with stuff. So we walked around to the back of the rig and opened up the back doors. No one was back there. I checked both oxygen bottles and neither were opened. Needless to say, we kept the lights on in the rig and didn't sleep much after that. I don't know if I believe in hauntings, but I guess it would make sense for an ambulance to be haunted. Rig 12 had been in service with various agencies for over a decade, and probably seen its fair share of patients die in the back. I rode in it a couple of shifts after that, but nothing else strange happened that I recall. An angel watching. My boss bought a little truck for my brother and I to use on occasion. We would load semi-trailers with pine seedlings that were boxed up. Now it was mid-December in Georgia, and it had gotten into the 30s. We were told a trailer would be coming to load at 6 a.m. The boss said it could be later, but we should arrive early and just keep the truck running to stay warm, and even sleep if we wanted, till it got there. He would still count the time. Well, we get to the tree farm, which is 3 miles from the house, and nothing is there so we hunkered down for some more sleep with the truck on. I started getting super sleepy, and I fall asleep, and so does my older brother. I then start to hear faintly my name being called, and I try to answer, but I could barely move. My eyelids felt like they weighed a ton. All the while my name is getting called, kind of like when your mother wakes you in a loving way so as not to jostle you. I finally make a huge effort and open my eyes. The voice stops, and my body barely registers that I'm demanding it to move. I finally got a hand on the door handle and opened the door. It took several attempts. I rolled out of the truck and just got on the ground on all fours weakly while leaning against the truck. It took a minute or two for my mind to finally clear some, and for me to gain some strength. Then I turned the truck off and began to wake my brother up. It took longer than usual, but he did wake up. I then told him to go ahead and get some air. I looked around, but there was no one else in the area besides the two of us. I began talking to my brother to tell him what had happened, and apparently he had tried to crack the window open earlier, but I yelled at him to close that effing window. I didn't remember ever doing that, and I told him so. I apologized for my outburst as we waited outside. The trailer showed up a little later and we loaded it. It warmed up to the 60s, so we drove home slowly with the windows down just to kill time. My boss later came and got the truck as he needed it elsewhere. A week passes and I ask him where it was. He tells me it was in the shop getting a new exhaust. As it turns out, there was an exhaust leak, and it was leaking into the truck's cab. The Australian Ghoul. This happened when I was camping with my friends at Mount Crawford, which is in South Australia. We were doing filming for a web page that we had been working on. We were all aged between 16 and 21. It was getting dark, and for some reason I decided to go for a walk. It got darker and darker until I realized that I was lost. Me being 16 years old, I was very scared. I heard footsteps about 10 meters behind me. I quickly turned and saw nothing. I was so scared I could hear my heart thumping in my ears. I looked carefully into the middle distance, and I saw a figure dressed in black clothing. As it got closer, it started whispering. It was a male voice, and it said that it was going to take me back to its lair in the mountains and eat my flesh and see what my body was made of. I was frozen, and I wanted to run, but I was too terrified. As it came closer, I could see its face was red, and it had a long nose. His eyebrows were thick, and he talked without moving his lips. Then I heard my friends yell my name. I turned to see where they were for a split second, and when I looked back, it was gone. The end.